Rev up your engines! Okay, look, my wife's car. Somebody painted it, put fancier wheels on it. No, this is the same car. It's a 2002 Lexus ES 300. He bought it 8 years ago for $3 grand. It's got 200-something thousand miles on it. Now, he changed the wheels. He still had the original ones, but he got a good deal on these, so he didn't care. He even got the full carbon fiber gas cover here. The vehicle's in excellent shape, but it does have a little bit of rust there from all that salt that they stick on the road. I'm glad I don't live in Maine. And as you can see, hey, he snazzed it up. He added these. All that plastic will fade away. He stuck them on. I gotta say, they're pretty sharp. He got those chrome side pieces for like 60 bucks on eBay. Did do both sides, I gotta say. You go inside, you got a little crack in the seat, but my wife did the same thing, only I fixed hers before it cracked the whole way. You can get nice seat coverage for it if you want, but you know, you're talking about a 22-year-old car. Things are gonna wear. Now as we check under the hood, of course it's the same engine as my wife's car. It's a variable valve intelligence V6 24 valve, and these things can run forever. This has got over 200,000 miles on it. The only thing you ever gotta mess with is the timing belt, because they do have rubber timing belts. It was changed at 90,000 miles before he bought the car. Now he's got 224. He's thinking about changing it, but I think I'll talk him out of it because I've never changed it on my wife's. The thing is, I have never ever seen a timing belt break on one of these, even if they had 300,000 miles. And being that this is the ES 300, that means that it's 3.0 liter or 3,000 cc's. These are non-interference engines. Even if the stupid belt broke, it wouldn't hurt anything. Now, if you get the in-between one after this, when they made the engines a little bit bigger, those are interference engines. And you'd have to change the belt every 100,000 miles, because if it ever did break, goodbye engine. This would just be an inconvenience. It won't hurt the engine at all. And of course, then after a few years, they went to timing chains instead of belts, and you don't have to think about them at all. I got 225,000 miles, doesn't burn oil, still the original transmission on the thing, and he's got the original headlights. Check it out. He's polished it with one of those kits, and look how good they look. But I do have to say, still like the replacements I put in my wife's, because it's got those cool angel eyes LEDs. You can do a lot of things to these. It's not all that expensive because they sold tons of these worldwide, and there's a tremendous aftermarket for these things. Since they last so long, people still make parts for them. But since even on eBay, these things, hey, they're 400 bucks a piece. He figures, what the heck? And he did a good job polishing them. You can just polish them every so often. But take my advice and heed this warning. Don't get clear coat paint, because then they'll be ruined. It'll fade away after a period of time, and then you can't really do it again, and it doesn't last. You want to polish them. You don't want to get clear coat paint and spray them. I've seen so many guys do that, and I tried it years ago, and invariably in the sun of Texas, it just faded and looked horrible within a year. So you can polish them. It's not that hard to polish them. So you polish them once every while, you know, maybe once a year or something. It's not hard to do. And if you really want to be a fanatic, you can do like your teeth. You can use toothpaste, and that'll shine them up pretty good too. And it's so weak that you can do that whenever you want when it starts to look bad. He likes taking care of his car, so he has done the brakes and the rotors, and he's changed the wheel bearings on all four wheels. You know, 200-something thousand miles, wheel bearings will wear out, and they're readily available in places. The front ones are pressed in. They're kind of hard to do, I'd say. Leave it to a pro. The back ones just bolt on and off because they're an assembly, and they're real easy to do. Anybody can bolt those on and off. But the front ones you probably want to leave to a mechanic like me with special tools and a 20-ton press to press them out and press them in, because it's part of the assembly in the front. You don't just bolt it off and bolt it on. The old bearing's got to be pressed off, and the new one's got to be pressed on. But really, he only paid $3 grand for this car, you know, and he's got 100-something thousand miles he's put on himself. So you got to say, the guy's making out like gangbusters. Oh, here comes our little auto scan tool. Got the key turned on, and we'll do a diagnosis. You can see, other than the color, it's exactly the same as my wife's, but this is a more luxurious one because it came with the fancy dash that's got readouts on it. Mind you, the GPS doesn't work anymore, but we all have phones, so who really cares? cares? You can see in the back it does have the rear shade that goes up and down. It's up now, but it still works. So here we go. It's doing its thinking thing. It's an older car, so just like my wife's, it's going to be relatively slow compared to the new ones. ES300, North America, 2002. MZFE engine. There's the VIN number. Do a diagnosis, an auto scan, and while it's scanning, we'll look around some more. Got the old sunroof. Hilariously enough, his mother said to him, "What are you buying this old car for?" Well, hey, $3 grand, 120,000 miles later, it's still running really good. I always say he got the deal of the century. Now, mind you, his had over 100,000 miles when he bought it for $3 grand. Mine only had 65,000 miles that I got from my wife, but still, he got a phenomenal deal. Oh, okay, it's 22 years old. Everything's green. Everything's no fault. Let's start her up and look at live data. Okay, long-term fuel trim, 3.8%. Now that means that it's adding 3.8% fuel on average, which is typical on a car with 200-something thousand miles, because they'll have a tendency of running a little bit lean. If he wanted, he could buy some of Bernie's ATS fuel cleaner. That stuff is amazing, and it would probably go closer to zero, but it runs perfectly fine for him. Nothing you really have to do, but what happens is the injectors with 200-something thousand miles, they don't spray all the gas that they should, so it runs a little bit lean, so it adds a little bit of fuel, but really, if it runs as smooth as this, I'd probably throw cleaner in it just to kick and see how much better that it got, but it's nothing to worry about. And he just told me he's getting close to 25, so I'd leave it alone. Because if your car runs a little lean and it has to add fuel, you're getting better gas mileage. And I fixed a lot of cars in my time that ran a little bit lean, but then they got worse gas mileage. Because if you're running lean, you're using less fuel and more air. So I definitely leave this alone. Now the ignition's stable, showing there's nothing wrong with the timing belt. If the timing belt was worn, it'd start flopping around, which it isn't. Fuel trim is 0.99, and now this one is 0.99, and that one goes to 1. So really, it's not really running all that lean. I mean, 1 is perfect, right? And then sometimes it's 0.99, so it's 1/100% off. So hey, they made these things in Japan, and they knew what they were doing. Now we'll look at other data, transmission data. That's all normal. Fluid temperature, that's normal. Not gonna have any misfires because it's running perfectly. There we got the misfire count. Zeros down the line. Well, check it out. There's the sunscreen. Now we're gonna put in gear. There goes the sunscreen. Oh, that's so cool. And it still works 22 years later. Now, here we go down the road. And these are the worst roads in the world, the Rhode Island roads. And it rides pretty much the same as my wife's does, even though it's got 120,000 miles more than hers does. Still shifts smooth, extremely reliable transmissions. Don't worry about pulling in front of people with one of these. They got plenty of zip, even though they're 22 years old, got 220,000 miles on them. I mean, listen to this car. Okay, I'll turn the turn signal off. It's still quiet. You can barely feel them shift gears, even with all this mileage on it. There's a big advantage to one of these Lexuses with a V6 engine. It's smooth power. You don't get jerkiness. 220,000 miles, still doesn't burn oil. I don't like the Lexuses with 4-cylinder turbos. They don't feel the same. They're a rougher car, and a lot of them start burning oil when they get older. Yeah, they're still decent made cars, but they're nothing compared to these old ones. They should have just left them well enough alone and leave the V6 engines in. These engines are pretty much ultra dependable. The wood on the steering column's still in good shape, just like my wife's car. So there you have it, a fancier version of my wife's car in white that's got 130,000 more miles than hers does. They're both 22 years old. His mother saying, "Why did you buy that old car? That was 100-something thousand miles ago." Well, it showed to be a very wise decision. It's still going, doesn't burn oil, still shifts like a dream. And as he found out, he only uses aftermarket parts and he has no problems with them. They made so many of these engines and designs, there's plenty of aftermarket stuff that you can get at a reasonable price. You don't have to go to Lexus and buy a $800 control arm. You can get aftermarket ones for 100-something bucks. But as I always warn people, this only applies to the V6 Lexuses. If you buy a V8 Lexus, you better have some money, because those parts cost a fortune. For example, I get a brake master cylinder for this thing, 145 bucks. On the V8s, it's all computerized. Some of those things, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400. Do you want to spend that kind of money on an old car? No. These, they're not set up that way. They're basically fancy Camrys. And Camrys, you can get parts for. A lot of the parts are interchangeable. Same basic engine and everything. So, you can find one like he did, and you only had to pay $3,000 with 100-something thousand miles, and now you got 220. Hey, snap it up, because even if you're tired of it, somebody else will buy it from you. You never have to worry about that. When he bought this at a lot, the guy says, man, these things are so hard to find because people are always snapping them up. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.